Hello and welcome to the Video Game Book Club. I'm Savvy.
I'm Elise.
And this month we read, do you think
Bendy and the Ink Machine, Dreams Come to Life.
I was trying to decide if it's just called Dreams Come to Life or is it called Bendy and the Ink Machine Dreams Come to Life? Because I've seen it both ways.
Yeah, I think Bendy and the Ink Machine is supposed to be the series, and are there more in the series?
Yeah, there's 3.
Yes, Dreams Come to Life is Adrian. So it's written by Adrian Kress, and it is her first foray into writing horror. She is also an actress, so yeah.
So there's that.
Follow her on Twitter and Instagram.
Okay. Yeah, I wanted to read the Bendy book because the Dark Revival came out a couple months ago, which is the sequel to this game.
And I have never played the Bendy game, so this was interesting.
You should not read this book if you don't already know about the game.
100%. I think you and I had very different ratings because I gave it a 3-star. I almost gave it a 2. But it picked up a little bit more in the end, and so it got a 3 from me.
I gave it a 5. At first I was going to give it a 4 because it's kind of slow, but I decided to give it a 5 because the twist at the end is really good if you know what it is. Like, if you've played the game.
Yeah, it picked up in the end for me, and the very last page, because once again I read the paperback and Savvy listened to the audio. So the very last page, there's some cool design thing on it that I was like, oh, that was creative, and I appreciated that. So that helped bump it up a star. So
what is the back of the book?
The back of the book. 17-year-old Buddy has spent most of his life trying to escape the Lower East Side slums of New York City. Hey, I'm working here. Working as a delivery boy to support his family. Buddy wants to become an artist, a dream he sure will never be realized. One, because he's never practiced. But that all changes when a delivery job puts him face to face with Mr. Joey Drew. I said Drew Joey. 2 first names. The eccentric owner of an animation studio. Mr. Drew, and I just want to point out, because this is an audio thing, Mr. Drew, not only in this, but throughout the entire book, is fully spelled out. Mister.
Like it's his first name.
Like it's his first name, so I got confused quite a bit. Takes Buddy under his wing as an apprentice, thrusting him into a world unlike anything Buddy has ever seen before. There's the colorful cast of the studio, from the cranky yet driven composer Sammy Lawrence to Dot, the writing intern. She's an intern?
I didn't know she was an intern.
I didn't know that either. And Buddy's counterpart. Working for Mr. Drew, Buddy starts to think that maybe it's really as simple as Mr. Drew says. Dreams do come true, but not everything.
Do they come to life?
Not everything at the studio is as picture perfect as it seems. Something is going bump in the night at Joey Drew's studio. Something that leaves behind trails of thick, dark ink. While the studio frantically works towards their latest deadline, Buddy and Dot team up to find out just what is tormenting the studio after hours, even if it means tracking the trail to Mr. Drew himself. Don't miss this official, original, pulse-pounding story from award-winning author Adrian Kress, developed with the Meatly? It says the Meatly, Mike Mood, and Book Past. Yeah, and it's interesting because it's copyrighted by Joey Drew Studios, Inc.
That's right. That's the game company name.
The cover art is designed by Betsy Peter Schmidt, and it says there's a bunch of drippy stuff on the cover.
It's got texture,
and then there's like ink blots, and even the chapters they also have drippy ink at the top, which you can actually see from the sides as you're reading it too. So I knew when I was gonna finish a chapter. And then it's got a Bendy character who's drawn. He's still got some of the original like
lines and stuff,
and it's like reaching out to you.
Aww. So
and even the QR code thing at the back has a little
drip.
Aww.
That's cute. I read the audiobook. It was narrated by Christopher Carley, and he was dope. It was so good. Like, he does such good characters, and it seemed like he listened to, like, the audio log. It seemed like he did the voices perfectly. So this is my first Spotify audiobook experience.
How did that go?
I decided to buy one on Spotify. It's interesting because they just go by, they don't go like the whole book. So they don't tell you how long you have in the entire book. They just tell you how long each chapter is.
Do you only get like each chapter at a time?
Yeah, well, you get all of them at once, but it goes just by chapter. So you'll press play and it'll be like chapter 4, this is 7 minutes and 30 seconds. And then it'll be like chapter 5, 30 minutes and 20 seconds.
So you don't, like on Libby and stuff, it tells you how close you are to the next chapter, but then it tells you how close you are to like the end of the book.
Yeah, I didn't know the whole time reading it how close it was to the end of the book, other than chapter wise. Like, I could see how many chapters I had left, but that was about it.
It was a pretty quick read. The book itself is close to 300 pages. It's about 25 chapters.
Okay, there's a couple of chapters that were like 30 minutes, but most of the chapters were either 15 to 8 minutes long.
Yeah, they're pretty short.
They're pretty short, which is kind of nice. I paced out throughout the week, so it was pretty easy.
I read it all at the last minute, and yeah.
Procrastinators.
Yeah.
Okay, so this book is written like a guy is recounting his experiences. Like, you picked up a notebook, like you just found it.
He's like writing to someone in particular. He's writing to Dot.
But he'll also be like, if somebody else is reading this, then
yeah. That to me, I've seen this done before in books. I don't feel like it was done as successfully because it goes back and forth in tenses where he's like talking about it as if it passed, but then you're there in the present. And I felt like in the book there needed to be like a separation of like, let's go back in time.
I thought that the audiobook did a pretty good job. Like, I knew where I was. This book actually tells you the backstory of one of the important characters in the game, Bendy and the Ink Machine. I can't tell you because that would be a spoiler.
We will spoil
it. But I will spoil it for you later on in this when we get to the spoiler section. I don't have anything else about this.
Yeah, definitely play the game first, and then because it's confusing as to what things look like. She's trying to be vague to create suspense, but at the same time, like, I can't picture it at all. And there's a lot of darkness because it has to do with shadow and ink. And like he kind of sees something, but he doesn't, and that was interesting, but also I couldn't picture it, and I need a map.
The descriptions were bad. I'm glad that I knew the game well enough and like the characters well enough, but I feel like if I didn't at all, the music room would be confusing, like the infirmary thing would be confusing, the stage would be confusing, the characters, they just show up, they'd be like, this is Wally, and I'm like, who that? Like, if I didn't know who that was because I played the game.
There's a lot of characters that just kind of get thrown in and they have very little description, and then like they pop up again and I'm like, who is that? I don't know who that is. So it's
cool if you know who they are because you're like, oh, it's that guy. But if you don't, I'd be like, he seems unimportant, why should I care?
So before reading this book, I have very little experience with Bendy, and then before we recorded this, Savvy had me play the first two chapters.
At least play the first 2 chapters.
Yeah, and then while I was playing, I'm like, oh,
they're very short. If you want to read this book
for
some reason and you haven't played Bendy and the Ink Machine, just play the first 2 chapters then.
It helps tremendously.
It's great.
With visual references. So it definitely is needed because, they show you the picture of Bendy at the front, and then...
Also, play Bendy and the Ink Machine and not the Dark Revival, because the Dark Revival has nothing really to do with this book. This is all Ink Machine, just to let you know. In case you decide that I should play the new one. Not yet. Not if you want to read this book. Let's get into spoilers. We're going to spoil the entire thing for you. We're going to tell you the entire plot of this book from start to finish, including the 6 twists. So stay tuned for danger. Okay.
All right. So the book, I know with Audible, you had issues before with prefaces and stuff like that. Was there a preface? Did it mention a preface?
It said epigraph.
Okay. 'Cause I have preface ? Because it's not labeled at all.
Yeah, you know what was weird though? One of the chapters showed up twice.
Did you feel like you were going crazy a little bit?
I thought they just skipped a chapter. They were like chapter 18, then chapter 18, and I was like, wait, what? And it was actually just that the chapter was really long, so they split it into 2.
They should tell you part 2 then.
Yeah. They should have, but it was weird. They just went to the next one. Because if you're not looking at Spotify while it's reading you the books and it just kept going, you'd have no idea. So, I thought that maybe it messed up, but no, it's just
No,
that
just
it
part
was a
two.
different section of that chapter.
So in the very first sentence is, I see that smile everywhere. And then it goes on, it greets me in the darkness suddenly, around a corner, in my dreams, that big wide grin, mouthful of teeth that look flat and even. You'd never know how sharp they were until you're sliding down its gullet. That is the way this book starts.
So Buddy is telling you, the reader, why he is writing this book.
I have to tell the story, don't trust the drawings, and then I wrote, who is Dot?
Yeah. He's talking to someone named Dot. We don't know who that is yet. Unless you read the back, I guess.
And not an intern. But she is a lady who's working in the writing room in like the 1940s. So that's weird.
Yeah, it's weird to Buddy. That's all I have for the epigraph, really.
Yep.
It's just letting you know that he's writing this out in not present tense, but
It's his present, but he's like reflecting in the past.
yeah, he's just writing his story, his memoir.
Yes, it is his memoir.
Yeah.
Of the adventures of the Joey
Buddy
Drew
Lewick, right?
Yeah. It was weird that we don't get that till the end either. I was like, oh, he's got a last name.
I think it does show up in the beginning.
Oh, because he talks about what his full name is. His name's not Buddy.
His name is Daniel. He goes by Buddy.
He goes by Buddy, and I don't know if he realizes that Buddy is something you call someone when you don't know their name. Hey there, Buddy. Hey,
maybe he just likes it because he was called Buddy his whole life.
Yeah.
So he just was like, that's what everyone just calls me. So I'm just kidding.
Because they don't know your name.
Well, maybe he doesn't want to be known as Daniel. Okay,
Buddy.
chapter 1. Dreams do come true, but so do nightmares. That's not the name of the chapter. That's just the first note I made.
I have that too. It's a package deal.
Dang.
And then we have Mr. Drew, and I wrote M.R. Drew question mark, like, is that his first name? And then we find out Joey. And then so we're actually in the Lower East Side in 1946. So this is post World War II.
Buddy is working class.
He's like, I'm super poor, but he's working. He's 19. His mom works she's a seamstress.
He said he was 17.
Oh, is he 17? I thought he was 19. Oh, 17. Hello.
Dot's 19.
Yeah. Someone's 19.
Because
they're drinking cola.
It's hot in Buddy's neighborhood. He's sweating.
It's in New York in the summer. So
he works for Mr. Schwartz, who is he delivers suits. So Mr. Schwartz is like the suit guy, but his mom makes the suits, tailors the suits.
Yes.
And so he delivers the
and
suits.
he's awful at it. Because he wastes all his time in Central Park watching cartoonists draw, and then he's like, oh no, I'm late.
Yeah, he likes the caricature artists. And he loves reading the funnies, and he likes to draw. He delivered a suit to Joey Drew Studios. And but Joey is dead. JK. Norman the projectionist was joking.
It's a weird introduction to this place.
Yeah. He walks in, the receptionist is like busy, and she's like, what do you want?
Yeah. He sees a smiling cartoon.
The power's out, right? The power's out because it's too
the power's
hot.
out. So there's, I mean, that happens in New York. That's not the first time, not the last time, but there's a poster that's smiling with a cartoon that makes him feel weird. Daniel is called, we find out what his name is. Finally meets Mr. Drew.
Yeah,
He's like, you have to take it up to the office because we got too many things to do.
Norman says, like, follow
It's
me
hot.
up the stairs.
Yeah.
The elevator's not working because of the power outage. So he goes up the stairs, and then he's like, I'm just going to let you go the rest of the way.
Further up there, it's hot.
Here's the flashlight. Have fun. Bye. So, okay, he goes to the top, and it's... But he just passes out because it's too hot.
Yeah. He's like, I'm sweating. This is going to look awful.
And he falls on the ground, and he makes a clunk noise.
We find out later that he only has like 2 pairs of clothes.
Yeah. And
Which
Joey's
is
like,
odd to
what's
me
that
his mom's a
dunk?
seamstress and he only has like...
Too busy making suits.
Yeah.
Yeah, Joey's like, what's that thunk outside of my office? Oh, this
Oh,
kid.
it's a boy.
This kid.
The kid.
He lets this kid into his office, gives him his suit.
He's like, you got something. He's like staring at the Bendy
He saw
picture.
his
and
hand
he's like, this
had
is weird.
ink stains
Oh,
on
yeah.
them. Buddy's hand has ink stains. Joey noticed and asked if he wrote. And Buddy's like, I draw sometimes. And he's like, oh.
An artist. I could use that.
Joey shows him a picture of Bendy. And he's like, what do you see? Like a Rorschach test. And Buddy's like, I don't know, some mischief maker looking guy. And Joey's like, yes, yes. Most people just say that's a cartoon character, but you look deep in its soul. You're better than everyone
You
else,
saw
buddy.
that it was up to no good.
What was funny was it took Buddy a while to realize it was a devil.
Yeah.
He was just like,
I did, honestly, I didn't
this
get that
drawing
at
looks
all.
like trouble.
Because he's got the picture of Buddy, he's got like a heart-shaped face, but then there's like a black thing around it with pointy tops. And I didn't
That's
realize
fair.
that those were devil horns either. So
I mean, when you play the
Buddy.
first chapter and you see that it says like the dancing demon, then you're like, oh yeah, okay.
Oh, yeah,
I
get it.
see. Joey asked if Buddy would like to work for him as a gopher with a kind of an art internship.
Yeah.
Only kind.
But like Buddy also never signs a contract or
He's like, coming the next
doesn't
day.
really know when to show up or like where to go or
I think he just says, see you tomorrow.
yeah, so he's like double the pay and like he never asks him how much he's making and so
And in chapter 2, they say that Joey Drew's smile doesn't match his eyes, which is like my favorite expression ever. I learned about that recently.
oh yeah.
Where like your smile doesn't match your eyes, and I was like, that sounds like the creepiest thing
It's because
ever.
it's fake. Like
Yeah.
when you are jovial, like your eyes squint and so you can tell that
Looks
it's
fake.
it's dishonest is what it is. Yeah.
Yeah,
You're like,
it just
hey,
means
kid,
that
look at these choppers.
It's an ominous way to say somebody's being disingenuine.
Yes.
Buddy doesn't know who Bendy is because he was too poor.
He's poor, can't see the
And
cartoons.
also they're
and
old.
movies. Yeah.
Joey gives Buddy a tour, and they run into the gent worker, Tom. Joey is like, oh, I can't give you this tour anymore. I have a meeting. I'll see you tomorrow.
Miss Rodriguez is his secretary, and she's like always doing something.
Very busy.
Tom Connor
Tom Connor.
shows up, and he's got like a package or something under his arm, or he's got something important.
Something important.
That's what he like focuses on. He's like, oh, so he basically ditches Buddy for Tom.
He's like, let me show you around. Just kidding. Never mind. It's kind of like the same with Norman. He's like, here, let me lead you upstairs. Just kidding.
Just-
Take
yeah,
the
keep
rest
going.
of your
It's
way.
too hot.
I don't want to do this.
I also wrote down Miss Miller, who I don't remember who that is.
Yeah, I don't remember who that is either.
Yeah, and then Norman again. So I was trying to write down because there's a lot of characters that just like pop in and out, and some of them are important, and some of them are only there for the scene.
So Buddy quits his suit gopher job with Schwartz, and he gets home late, and then he has a nightmare.
Dreaming of darkness, a door with a knock.
He has a hand reaching through like some boards, which is just the jump scare from the first chapter. He wakes up and he sees an old man in his door
Thin
frame.
figure stood in my doorway. An old man? Yeah, that would be kind of ominous too. Or
That's spooky.
like, who
this
is this?
old
'Cause
man in my doorway?
it's just him and his mom. His dad died in the war. So we know, I think we hear before that his grandpa was an artist because they have his like paintings hanging around their apartment, which are in big heavy frames, and they're not doing very well financially. And he's like, Mom, why don't we sell these paintings? And she's like, no.
Sentimental.
Yeah.
He like closes his eyes and he's like, oh, it must be a dream. I must be seeing this old man. He opens him up and the old man's still there until he screams and his mom comes in and is like, what's wrong? Turns out the old man is Buddy's grandfather who only speaks Polish.
Yes. So he is the artist from Poland, and he just showed up, and the mom was like, well, because Buddy didn't go home right away. It's like, oh, I'm excited about this thing. And so he stayed out, and she's like, well, you didn't come home right away and tell me the news, so I couldn't tell you about your grandfather. Sorry.
He tells his mom about his new job now that we're talking about things.
And she also did not have a heads up that he was coming. He just kind of showed up.
yeah, she's not happy about that either, but not as much as Buddy. Buddy's pretty pissed about this, to be honest.
So it's weird that her father comes and Buddy gets a job drawing on the same day because they're both artists.
Chapter 3, Buddy meets Dot.
Who remember the five senses, which is something that is a writing thing where he does it several times in the book.
What?
It's the first of the five senses thing.
Oh.
Let me read it to you. Actually, it's in chapter 1. The five senses. What are the other four again? Right. Sound, kids laughing and yelling. So he does this thing where he like goes through the five senses in the scenario that he is to try to remember it.
Interesting.
And
oh, yeah, because he can't really sense anymore.
yeah. So in chapter 3, it's like, what's my story? Remember the 5 sentences: the smell of the apartment, old and moldy, but also of meat and potato and cabbage rolls. Sounds delicious. The water stained ceiling above the bed, the sound outside the street, the cars, people yelling, even at 2 a.m, the itchy blanket. I remember it. I met you the next morning, Dot.
It's a girl his age who works at Joey Ju Studio. She's a writer. They both came into the studio at the same time.
She's got sweaty, dirty blonde hair, which was like...
Sweaty, dirty. She wear like big glasses too.
Sweaty, dirty blonde hair. She called him a baby horse.
Because he's tall and lanky.
Yeah.
Buddy meets Mrs. Lambert, I believe is her name.
Who is also another woman with a high position.
She's the head of the art department. Because he walks into the receptionist and he's like, "Hi, I'm the new gopher. Joey hired me yesterday. Where am I supposed to go?"
She's like, "There's a dark desk in the corner. I guess that could be yours."
Yeah. So they introduce Buddy to the department. Buddy meets Jacob, an artist who gives him his first job to take some papers to Story.
So here's the thing. I did not play this game before I read it. And so the only reference I had to this type of stuff was Mad Men. And so that's what I was picturing with this whole book. And it's not at all what this is. Because now playing the game, I'm like, oh, there's like random desks.
Weren't they an advertising company?
Yeah. And they had different departments.
Different than a studio.
Yeah.
Animate. Well, I guess.
But they still did the drawing and they do the advertisements for the different offices and stuff like that. So
Buddy is given Henry's desk, who you will know as the one original creator of Bendy, and 2 the protagonist of the first game.
Which my question was, if he's a gopher, why does he need a desk?
Just to sit at. Nobody wanted to sit at the Henry desk. I guess.
And then he's like, okay, so I saw Bendy, and then above it's also Alice Angel and Boris the Wolf. And then we get introduced to Jacob.
Yeah, who gives him his job to go take this papers to Story, and he does, and that's where he delivers it to Dot in the writing department. And the place is like a maze, and there's also not a lot of people here.
Which I said, it might have been helpful to give this new kid a tour or at least a map. And it would have been really helpful for me if I had a map.
They also talk about how poor the studio is because when he goes to the department, they're like, "I didn't know we were hiring anyone new."
Yeah, there was a hiring freeze.
Yeah, so and Miss Lambert was just like, "Well, I guess we just have him, so might as well use him."
So Dot is the only female writer in the room, and she sends him somewhere else.
No, he has to get back to the art department, and he can't find his way, and he gets lost. So he accidentally goes to the music department.
But before that, there's a locked door, and then there's another hallway where there's like an unused bathroom. And
there's unused bathrooms, and he's on a floor where he's like, "There's nobody on this floor.
I feel weird.
This feels weird." So he eventually goes to he followed music because he heard music playing somewhere. So he's like, "I'm just gonna follow that and then ask who's ever playing that music for directions."
Then we meet the creepy violinist who says, "He's coming."
He walks in, looks like everyone went to lunch, but one lady who's playing the violin. And when Buddy asks for directions, he hears a crash. Yeah, the lady's like, "He's coming."
A man just like launched himself into the room and he is covered in ink.
He falls onto Buddy, and Buddy like realizes that he's covered in ink, and he pushes the guy off, and the guy's screaming on the floor, and Buddy's like, "Okay, we have to clean out his eyes. Like, let's go get a towel or something." Yeah, he helps clean him up, and it turns out that Joey is running a pipe full of ink through the music department sheet music closet, and that's how this guy got covered in ink.
It busted.
He's
like, "Clean it up, kid."
He takes Buddy to the closet to complain because once he said, he's like, "I'm Buddy from the art department." He's like, "Art department?" Well, then that means you have to clean up this mess that the pipe just burst, and the ink is really hard to clean.
Yeah, how do you clean that?
He just used a mop, I guess.
Because as anyone who's ever had a pen explode on them,
Buddy tried. He like organized stuff.
Yeah.
But he's like cleaning the ink off the floor was super hard.
And he's got ink all over himself too. And then it's like, I am ink.
Too much ink.
Yeah.
Becoming ink. Chapter 4, Buddy's cleaning, and then Dot comes down to see him, and he's like, "Oh, the guy who yelled at you, that's Sammy." He's just like that.
I put in my notes, Dot is short for Dorothy. Buddy is not short for Daniel.
He knows that,
That's
though.
what she's like, "Well, Buddy, that's not what..."
Dot wanted to show him something in the basement. Oh, also, they asked if ink could go bad, and my question is that true? Can ink go bad?
I think it can get like sticky, can it? And
Or dry?
yeah.
Can it dry out? I don't know. I don't know what you mean by bad, but
I guess it depends
not
on
working anymore
what
in your
it's
pen.
made out of. Maybe
Magic.
it smells. I don't know.
Yeah, Dot wanted to show him something in the basement, and so she's like, "Follow me," and they go into the basement where all of this like theme park, Coney Island, Bendy Land stuff is.
Yeah, bumper cars, a full scale model of Bendyland. I'm like, why are we here?
I don't know. Dot just wanted to show him.
He's like, hey, new kid, let me show you
Yeah,
something.
we're the same age. We're
Yeah.
buddies now. She stole keys from Wally the janitor, who's always losing his keys. As you know from the game, you have to find Wally's keys in trash cans and to get you into doors.
Yeah, this was confusing. I'm like, he keeps asking questions. I'm like, is this important? It's a lot of information to like throw at you without giving it really a lot of background information.
Talk a lot about asking questions because he's like, I admire Dot for being so direct. He's like, I never asked questions, nor I never cared really that much, and I feel like I should have asked more questions. And that's a constant regret that this dude has, is that he didn't ask enough questions. And I don't really think that would have helped him because everyone was being cagey about it anyway, so I don't think that really matters.
Yeah.
Anyway, they made it back to the art department after that weird detour
like,
to Bendy.
I sneak around. I want to collect facts.
She's bored.
Because of the gut thing? Yeah, they're talking about. I like you, kid. It's in my gut.
It's in my gut. You look like a horse. Horses are trustworthy, right? Yeah, so they're going back to the art department, and since nobody has anything else for Buddy, he gets to go home early today.
So I'm like, is there no hours at this place? They're like, oh, it's crunch time, so you should go home because we're going to be here forever.
Isn't that, I think I read that in like a book about Disney, where he's like, I don't care what time you show up and leave, just as long as you get your stuff done.
Oh, I appreciate bosses like that.
So maybe it's like the same thing.
He goes home and he forgets that his grandfather's there. Tough day. He's creepily staring because he can't talk to these.
Yeah,
I mean, his mom
speaks
speaks Polish, though.
Yeah, his Buddy and his mom are sad about the grandfather, and I guess the dad. I thought the dad was MIA because they talk about being like, Pa hadn't sent a letter in weeks.
Yeah,
and then later on in the book, they're like, he died a long time ago. And
I have like, it like in chapter.
Wait a minute.
1. Yeah, Dad died.
Oh.
Dropped. And so Buddy dropped out of school to help deliver Mom's sewing.
Okay, so.
Yeah. But it's like very quickly like mentioned in chapter 1. You find out later that he died in the war.
Okay, chapter 6. Buddy really wants to be part of the art department's like groupies. It's Richie, David, and Jacob. Hey, David! Hey, he'll come up later.
But not any other part in this book.
Mainly Richie and Jacob. That's who you need to pay attention to. But David will show up one more time.
And, by the way, Miss Lambert, who is the boss lady and a woman, likes to wear men's suits.
Yeah. Thanks, Buddy, for telling us that.
Yeah.
He learned about Sammy and Norman, the projectionist, and then Allison, the voice of Alice Angel. Mm-hmm. He also hung out with Dot a lot.
And then Mr. Drew just kind of like disappears. No one can find him.
Yeah, he's like MIA. They went to the pub, and Buddy wants Mr. Drew to tell Miss Lambert that he wants to drop, but Joey hasn't been around for a while. So Dot tells him to just draw. like, dude, don't ask for permission.
Yeah.
Ask for forgiveness.
But he's like, well, I'm poor and I don't have anything to draw on, which I'm like, like you can get scraps of things. And
so Dot gives him her key that she stole from Wally and is like, just go steal.
Borrow supplies. You're going to be an artist anyways. You might as well practice for the business. And so.
Yeah. So Buddy goes back to the sheet music closet in chapter 7. He gets paper and ink, and while he's looking for a pen, he hears the voice of Tom Connor, the gent guy, and Sammy, and they're fighting. Ink is very important to Tom.
He also didn't want to steal from the art department, so he goes to the music closet.
Because he knows there's spilled ink there. Tom thinks Sammy is stealing ink, and then they also talk about a machine. But
he's like, leave my ink alone.
Buddy went to go see Dot to return the key and told her about the Sammy and Thomas and the machine conversation.
And the key is hid in the Sherlock book on her in her desk.
Yeah.
So Dot's like, oh, machine, I'm gonna go find it.
Buddy had to deliver something to the music department, and he saw Sammy with a bottle of ink next to him. And when he looked back, it was empty. Okay, and I wrote, "Oh my god, LOL, he's drinking the ink."
I put he's eating it. I don't know why I said he's drinking it.
I was like, LOL, he's drinking the ink, and he actually is drinking the ink.
It's like
it's in the corner of his mouth.
Which like people chew on pens and stuff, which that happens.
Well, yeah, because when Buddy goes and tells Dot what happened later on in this book, she's like, "Oh, was he chewing on a pen?"
Yeah,
and
but he's like the bottle was like halfway full, and then I turned around and it's empty.
He chugged it, dude. He took a shot of that ink.
Don't drink ink, kids. That's not good.
Like, I thought it was a joke. I was like, "Oh, I'm so funny, LOL," and then it's actually what happened. That's really funny. Anyway, Chapter 8, Buddy got home and started to draw Cowboy Bendy. Because Dot was going to write a story about that. They were talking about it.
Also, like, at the end of... So, this is Chapter 8, but at the end of Chapter 6, we find out that him and his grandpa are sleeping in the
same bed.
Yeah. Because Buddy's got the big bed, and, like, his mom, like, sleeps on the couch or
the big bedroom, yeah.
So,
they're
spending a lot of time together. And so he starts to draw Cowboy Bendy, but here's the thing about Buddy. Buddy can't draw.
He's drawing really bad Bendys and like a really bad horse.
He gets really frustrated.
And his grandfather comes in and just snatches the paper from him. He's like, he wants to draw too, so he's like, give me that pen.
Yeah.
And then he draws the perfect horse and Bendy riding it.
In like 30 seconds.
Yeah. And Buddy's like, oh my gosh, I have to go talk to my grandpa about this. And his grandpa's like, oh, you want me to teach you? And Buddy's like, no, and then runs away.
Why would you not let...
He's so mad at his grandpa. He hates this guy.
It was really weird. Yeah, he shows up randomly, but at the same time, like...
Well, he's mad at his grandpa because he is making his mom sad.
Well, yeah, but...
So... You
find out later why.
Yeah,
but...
and, it's not really his fault.
Also, I have to say, this grandpa is impressive.
He is. So Buddy ran away after saying no to wanting to teach him, which is, a little drama queen, but he's 17.
But he kept the picture.
He did.
And he takes it to work and is, staring at it.
He took it to work and people thought it was his and it was cool.
He took credit for it.
He did. He thought about it and he definitely did. Miss Lambert noticed that it was stolen paper and ink and he was sent to the principal's office.
Yeah, she's like, Buddy, we don't steal here. We have very little material.
Oh, Buddy, where'd you get the paper and ink, huh? All right, you need to go to Joey Drew's office. Get a slap on the wrist.
This was fired. Yes, because there's this weird animosity between Mr. Drew and the ladies that work there. Buddy's like, oh, it's weird that there's ladies here at the head of the department, but that's kind of cool. And the Dot gives them the info. Or yeah, when the war happened,
all the dudes left.
All the ladies got to work.
And then when the dudes came back, they got sexist about having to listen to women. So the ones that left couldn't take it.
Yeah, and that's why we don't have as many. That's why we have empty desks and empty rooms.
Mm-hmm.
And but Mr. Drew has a weird relationship with these ladies that he hired, because the way, especially Miss Lambert, the way that he's like, oh, don't listen to her, she's just a woman. I'm like,
yeah, but she's still head of the department.
Yes, and you hired her, sir.
He showed Joey the drawing when he went to Joey's office, and Joey is not mad at all.
Also,
about him stealing the stuff.
Does this "we're not a baseball team" reference come from?
I don't know.
So when she catches him stealing, she's like, we're not a baseball team. And it was not really explained.
Maybe it was a reference we just don't understand.
Yeah.
We don't steal like baseball teams do.
And then, we got the bacon soup in here too, because it's like bacon soup. But now that I've played the game, I understand. I also like the fact that he got caught stealing and Joey's like, oh, I call that ambition.
Yeah. Well, he thinks it's ambitious too that he's, used it to draw, which I think that is what Buddy thought. He's like, well, it'll make me look like, I'm trying. Joey's been MIA because he's been working on new technology, is what he said. And he decides to take Buddy to his secret hole in the wall.
Yeah, they disappear through a hole in the wall.
It leads to a theater catwalk. and there's very long conversations about dreams and how they come to life.
Mm-hmm. There is this whole thing about, dream it, believe it, ambition.
Achieve it.
Yeah.
And little pixie dust, your dreams can come true. Buddy almost falls off the catwalk.
He doesn't almost fall, like he pushed him.
But Joey caught him, but he also pushed him. And then he's like, look, you see, I wanted to prove my point that the performance stopped because people were afraid, because you screamed when you got pushed.
So there's a play going on underneath him. He's like, I just bought this theater. No one knows about it yet, so don't tell anyone. And then, he almost falls off the catwalk. And so the actors on stage are like, what the?
Like, who's screaming up there? Yeah. And so he's like, see, when everyone works together, it's harmonious. And then if one person messes it up, like you just screamed, then it ruins everything.
It's the baseball team reference.
Okay, chapter 9. Miss Lambert is surprised that Buddy wasn't fired, but she told him to start working on Cowboy Bendy.
Yeah.
Because they needed references.
Then it's like, haha, kid, I see that that's not yours. So, yeah, she was a little salty. She's like, I brought him here because these are your rules, Mr. Drew. And he's like, oh, don't.
But I see potential in Buddy.
So, Dot takes Buddy to the pub across the street, and they get root beer.
She showed him the Cowboy Bendy script in hopes to, like, help him out.
And then Dot got the tea because she's like, well, Tom works for Gent.
Yeah.
Gent. And he's working on a machine.
And then Jacob comes over and interrupts them and talks about dating.
And says, if anyone knows what it's like to be ignored, it's the woman and the black man.
Yeah. But he just wanted to talk about how are they looking for love?
Yeah. But he doesn't have a girl.
And Dot's husband died in the war.
Yeah. Dun. She's like, I'm not ready to date.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, BT dubs, I'm a widow.
We got married like right before the war happened. We were like high school sweethearts.
And a month later, he died.
And Buddy's like, I don't know what to say, so I'm going to say that my dad died in the war too.
Yeah. And he's Jewish.
Dot asked if he was Jewish, and Buddy got defensive. This is when we find out that Dot's just very direct, because she's like, because once he started to get defensive, she's like, oh, okay, I see that you're uncomfortable.
Like,
and
he got up and left, right? It's like,
she got up and left. And then Buddy felt bad because she's like, she just asked, I shouldn't have got so defensive. So he goes after her.
But I mean, even at that time, it was a big deal. And I don't
it's
think
super weird to ask, though, to be honest. To like, you're at a bar, you're hanging out, and you're like,
I noticed your last name there.
So you Jewish?
Which, funny story. What? So my friends in high school would ask me if our brother was Jewish. You know me. we're related. And so people ask interesting questions. We then go back to the grandpa, and he takes him to the library.
Grandpa's going to the library. He does that a lot.
He knows the librarian, and he's teaching himself English with kids' books. Way to go, Grandpa. And
Buddy finally asked him for drawing help, and then his grandpa told him to study art history and start with the basics.
Yeah, which, so he gave him a whole bunch of art books, and then he's like, we're drawing circles today, kid. Which is a good, so we find out.
He finally was a teacher.
Yeah, you find out later he was an art teacher, and that's one of the reasons why he doesn't leave Poland.
Yeah, Buddy's actually, in chapter 10, he's having fun learning to draw. Yeah. He's doing pretty good.
Good for him.
Joey finally gives him his paycheck.
So he's been working for
3 weeks.
Drew for 3 weeks, and so he gets the paycheck, and he got paid a whole $40.
Ooh.
Which he was like, dang, that's so much money.
Yeah, and Joey's like, we don't know how much, we didn't negotiate pay, so I hope this is enough. Anyway, let's go out to celebrate. So they go to Sardi's? Sardi's?
Something like that.
Not sardines. I thought it was Arby's or Artie's.
Yeah, I didn't write it down, but that sounds about right.
It's a fancy place, and they ate steaks.
And Mr. Drew scoffs at his cola order. Like, this kid is 17.
And yeah, he's like, be a man, order booze.
And he's like, how are things going with Mrs. Lambert? She can be kind of a handful. And he's like, hey, how's things going? You see anything interesting? You let me know, kid.
Snitches get more money.
And then they have this whole like life is an illusion, and I was like, this is very
okay.
Jay Gatsby. Like,
Joey loves to just talk about his philosophies, and that's like all their relationship with Buddy is he just kind of talks at Buddy, and Buddy's like, uh-huh, yes sir, uh-huh, let me tell you about life, Buddy, it's not real.
it 100% reminded me of Gatsby, and I was like, oh, this guy.
This guy.
I saw this coming.
You did?
Yes, I saw this coming during the whole meal because I was like, this guy is so swarmy.
Swarmy.
And
good word for it.
Ugh.
He made him pay for the meal. Like the whole
he's
meal.
like, the check came and he's like, oh, you're gonna have to sign over your check to the waiter to pay for the meal. And Buddy's like, what? He's like, yeah. And so Buddy is like, okay. And so he had $40.
Now he has 25 because it's $15.
Their dinner was 15.
And he felt gross about it because he felt guilty because he's like, I went out and ate super fancy and I'm never doing that again until I can take my mom and my grandpa and like buy them nice outfits.
Yeah, because the whole reason why he's going up is he's trying to take care of his mom. His mom works all the time. And now that his grandfather's there, and he's like, I just lost $15, which is
a lot.
It's over what I was trying to do the math. So he gets like $18 a week,
I guess.
And so that's like almost a week's pay for him for like an hour dinner.
Yeah.
But what a messed up thing to do. Like, hey, let's go out and celebrate, kid. Here's your first check. You're paying.
That happened to me once. So
never again. And I'm like, Buddy, never say never.
Chapter 11, Buddy was working late, and then he hears a crash and a moan.
Because he wants to show that ambition, that he's got that drive.
So he went to go check it out in the music department where the infirmary was.
Yeah, why there's an infirmary.
I don't know. Most accidents happen in the music department, I guess. Well, I mean, look what happened with Sammy. You know?
He's like, that's weird. There's an infirmary. Well, I guess that makes sense. But there's also like these boards on the door,
like an X.
X. Like
X marks the spot.
Don't go here.
And there's something inside slamming on the door, and he decides, I'm gonna open that door.
I'm gonna open that door. Yeah.
So he goes and gets Dot's key, and then he goes and opens the door. And nobody is there. He sees a shadow creeping up on the wall and out the door. And an invisible monster is like smelling him.
Yeah, that's really gross.
He can like hear it. It's drippy, wet, little dark noises. He sees the shadow on the wall, and he can sense like he can hear it sniffing him. And then Buddy tries to run, but he's shoved like in the back.
Yeah, at first he's like, I can't move. I'm too terrified. I'm like, why did you get the key? Why didn't you wait? And just be like, oh, that's weird. What's there?
I don't know, Buddy. Wants to take initiative.
Does push him out the door.
It pushes him, and then he picks himself up and he runs away. But the shadow doesn't follow him, and Buddy's confused as to what the heck just happened.
And he wrecks his pants, but not in the way that you would think. He just stuffs his knee.
He went home and went to bed, and his grandpa woke him up and pointed at him in fear, and he's like, gotta take off the shirt.
Yeah.
So Buddy's like, okay, I'll take off my shirt. And he took off the shirt, and on the back of his shirt is a black inky handprint right where he was shoved.
So this is also his last shirt.
Yeah.
So
he has to start
he only had
from his grandpa.
2 pairs of clothes, and his other clothes got super inky
from when Sammy fell on him.
Yeah. So now his last pair of pants have a hole in the knee, which he can sew up, but he also has a handprint on his back now. And I'm like, I guess it's summer. I'm like, at that point, wear a jacket, dude. But it's summer, so it's too hot.
Chapter 12, he told Dot, and she believed him.
And Buddy tells dots, and she connects the dots.
They decide to go sniff around the music department.
They go to the infirmary, but nothing's there. They go to the music room. There's weird drawings in Sammy's book.
Yeah, creepy, smudgy drawings with a picture of Ink Demon Bendy and the words, he will set us free.
And so Buddy's looking at this, and Dot's like, hey, Buddy, come look at this. And he's, of course, not listening to her. And so she comes up and sees, and then...
They went back to the storage closet and saw that there was just a bunch of empty ink bottles.
Why are you keeping those?
Jacob interrupts them and says that Buddy needs to go to the lobby. His grandfather's asking for him there.
Okay, so when I first read this, I thought that it was like the end of the day, like they're sneaking around, but no, it's like the early on in the day that they're sneaking around doing this stuff. And yeah, Grandpa's there, and then Mr. Drew shows up, and like everyone's there in the lobby.
Yeah, because they're like holding the grandfather like he's a criminal.
Yeah, and then the grandfather like he's like, boss, and they're like, yeah, and so he takes Mr. Drew's hand and he like looks at it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, don't you be touching my grandson.
Yeah, and he like shakes his hand. Then Buddy's like, I gotta take him home because he wasn't allowed in the workplace. The grandpa, no grandpa's allowed.
It's like when your kid shows up, right?
Yeah.
No kids in the workplace. No grandpa's in the workplace. So then he walks around with the grandpa, and the grandpa takes him to the MoMA.
Yeah, to the art museum
of modern art.
And
but then he's also like, I don't know if that really happened.
He's having trouble remembering. He kind of takes him to the art museum against his will. Like, he's like, come on, Grandpa, let's go home. And then the grandpa, like, runs to the art museum. Yeah. And Buddy's like, dang, he's fast. And then his grandpa tells him, ink bad.
And that there was ink on the boss's hand, too.
Bad ink.
And Buddy's like, I have no idea what's going on.
Chapter 13, Sammy comes into the art department hot. He was mad. He wants his ink, but it's not in the supply closet. There wasn't any ink. They checked the supply closet. And
where's my ink? He like runs in, yeah.
They thought it was weird there was some in the art department, the music department. They were like, why is ink in the music?
Well, yeah, because he's like, open the supply closet, and then Miss Lambert's like, we keep it in a lock safe under my desk. And Buddy's like, well, that's weird. But there was all this stuff in the ink, like all the ink that spilled in the pipe, and I also thought it was weird, but then thinking about how expensive printer ink is, I get it. I like how also you don't need to act so entitled, is what she says to him. Yeah. You could just ask instead of demanding if you need some ink, sir.
Sammy has the quirk, right, where he calls people by their first names. He calls them, he called her like Linda or something, and then he called Tom instead of Mr. Connor, which he hates. And that's just how Sammy be. They give Buddy the task of drawing concept art for the cowboy Bendy.
And Buddy has this weird, and it's described as like, I have gas smile. What? He was smiling about before they wanted samples, so they came up and they were like looking at like, hey, and Buddy's like smiling, but he feels like awkward about it. But that's what it was described as, like he has gas.
Interesting.
Like it reminds me of like the Sheldon Cooper smile, I think is what I
like
pictured.
a kind of fake smile, like you don't know how to smile. Yeah. So.
Mm-hmm.
Joey was watching him draw and asked him if he knows about suits, and then he takes him away and drives him to a suit shop.
Before that, though, so they want the samples, and this is where we see they're like, we want the whole horse. And he's like, what?
Oh yeah.
And then he looks at so it was Cowboy Bendy and a horse, and then all of a sudden it's like lower on the page where
he can't see the hooves anymore.
Yeah, the legs.
Because when he first drew it, he saw that he was like, wow, look at the motion that my grandpa drew. So it's definitely sliding off the page.
So he's like, at first he's like a mind trick where he's like, were there no legs?
Maybe it wasn't there.
Remembering wrong?
Strange.
Weird. So yes, now we're at this suit place, and I think you and I both definitely had the thought that
he's gonna make him pay for this suit.
So he's getting a tux
for the big studio party.
And Buddy was like, oh, that's weird. Why is he getting his suits for my old employer when he goes to this guy? And then he's like, oh, that's right. My old boss is cheap and doesn't have
tuxes.
So he's like, have you ever been fitted for a suit there, buddy?
Yeah, so Joey invites him to the big party. He also accidentally calls him Henry, which is interesting.
And she's like, oh, which is the name carved on his desk.
Yeah. And he bought him a tux and drove him home.
But that tux was a returned tux that, so he definitely did not spend the big dollars like he did on himself. But at least
he didn't make him.
That is so true. I was waiting for it.
So he drove him home, and it felt really weird because he's in a fancy car in his, like, podunk neighborhood. Right?
And everyone comes out
Everyone's like, oh, look, it's Buddy in a fancy car. And Joey Drew is like, ew, commoners.
Yeah, as soon as Buddy gets out, he, like, speeds up.
He has Buddy get out of the car sooner than his apartment.
Yeah.
Because his car is getting crowded by all of these poor people.
Yeah, and he's like, Buddy, you're a big deal now, see? And Buddy's like, I feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, this makes me feel really uncomfortable. So.
And then also, like, Buddy, like, runs into his apartment and, like, slams his door and in people's faces because they're like, "Who's that, buddy?"
Yeah.
It's a big deal now. See.
And then he looks at his drawings and he sees them slipping off the page even more.
Mm. Yeah, I like how he also calls them chubby angels. Those are called cherubs. And the pictures are slipping. Does he throw it on the ground? Is that the point? Or is he just like, oh, that's weird?
I think he's just like, oh, that's weird.
Yeah, okay. Then later he throws them on the ground.
Yeah, I think so.
Chapter 14. Sammy disappeared.
Sammy's missing.
It's been 2 weeks since that whole suit situation.
Joey is upset about the machine.
The musicians have been locked out of the music room.
And Dot and Buddy are going to try to solve this mystery.
We find out that
the studio after hours.
Yeah, so after they're like, oh, Sammy disappeared and the musicians have been locked out. 3 days after that, Sammy didn't pick up his paycheck and Mr. Drew is mad about that. So
they went into the studio after hours to try to figure out what's going on. This is Dot and Buddy, and they found ink all over the walls.
Oh, this was also the police were there. And they shut down the studio. So someone broke into a robbery. They broke into the studio. They weren't allowed back in, and so Dot and Buddy sneak in. Mm-hmm. And there's trails of ink, large splatters on the wall, which is the game, right?
They saw the shadow monster.
And they hear the breathing.
They ran and they hid. They heard a crash, and then they found a figure covered in ink.
So
on the ground, I think.
Musicians can't get into the music room, but they just run right into the music room.
Yeah.
I was like,
I don't know. I can't tell you what's going on in here because I don't remember. I was like, I think they're on the stage from the game.
Yeah, right? It wasn't described very well.
And I don't know where the music room is in accordance to the outside, so
all of the stands and instruments are broken and the chairs are all over the place. So it has to be on the stage.
They're on the stage, yeah. They're on the stage. They have a flashlight. They're flashing their lights around. They find a figure covered in ink on the stage, and it's the violinist from before that has turned into a ink glob person.
And she says, "He's here."
It was like she was dropped from the ceiling, her plop. So they point the flashlight up, shaking, and they see this wet ink monster with teeth, from the infirmary, just on the ceiling. Chapter 15, they ran.
Well, the flashlight goes out. And they're like, classic. Oh, shiz.
They fled across the room and then silence. But they flashed their flashlight back at the monster. Their flashlight's still working.
Yeah, it turned off and then turned back on.
They don't hear anything.
And the thing is gone.
So they turn it on and they see that it's gone. And then they run into Norman, the projector guy. He's in the projector booth. So let's try to set the scene for you. There's the small stage and then there's a little bit of a dip. So I'm assuming they ran towards the where the piano and stuff is. And then right above them is this booth that has the projector.
But to get in that on the game, I had to go out and around.
Yeah. So that means Norman's come up to the projector booth, guys. So they have to go out and around the corner. But the ink creature's gone. And definitely Norman saw it.
And they're like, oh, did you see it? And he's like, I heard it. But they're like, okay, well, did you see it? And he says, not this time. So that means he's seen it before, and they look at the ink stain, and it looks like her body had been dragged away.
Norman's been watching them sneak around this whole time.
They're like, hey, Norman, you seem to know what's up. What's up? He doesn't know what's up.
He doesn't know what's up.
At all.
He's just he's very chill about this, to be honest.
Norman tells us what's going on.
Yeah, I haven't seen the ink monster today, maybe in a while, whatever.
There's something about ink and Henry is what he said.
He also knows that Buddy was the one who let the creature out because he's been watching them sneak around this whole time.
He thought that he was going to watch them make out, but they're not doing that, so he's disappointed.
And they're inappropriate, Norman. You can't just say that to us. Okay, that's the end of that chapter.
And then we find out about Henry in chapter 16.
Henry's the creator of Bendy and Joey Drew's former partner. Yes.
He left to
spend more time with his wife.
And then we find out that the voice of Alice also left, and that's
Susie Campbell.
Susie.
With the talent gone, Joey needed something to make Bendy popular again, so he decided that this machine is a good idea.
The machine does something to the ink.
When the ink goes in and it comes out different, and Norman thinks the ink took Sammy and it has a mind of its own. The ink does.
And then Buddy's like, oh crap, that ink's at my house.
Yeah, but he's freaking out because he took that bad ink home, so he ran out of the projection booth.
And Dot's like, what's up? What's going on? And he's just
Dot's like, we should probably wait for a little bit because
Yeah.
there was just a monster there, and Buddy's just out. He's gone. He's
yeah.
outie.
And Norman didn't have any information.
Chapter 17, he made it back home, and all his drawings were gone, and his paper was completely blank.
Oh, so he did throw them on the ground at that.
Yeah,
He's
I guess
they're
so.
slipping. Yeah.
The ink was moving and creeping on his grandfather,
Up
his
the
sleeping
bed.
grandfather, and it trying to get into his mouth.
Yeah.
Because you have to consume it, I guess.
And so he's like waking up his grandfather's like, what the crap? And they're like, we got to wash it off. Then his mom comes in and
His mom helps clean it off, and Buddy learns about his grandfather.
and then he keeps like trying to take off the ink, and the mom's like, stop. Like,
yeah,
that ink is the tattoo.
the tattoo. He has numbers on his arm.
Because he is a Polish Jew from World War II.
Yeah, so he finds out that he used to teach art in Poland, and he sent his paintings over when the Germans invaded.
And he stayed for his students. And then his mom lost track of where he was. And then she has an uncle, I think it was, that
found
him later.
tracked him down. He was being taken care of by another family.
And then that's why he just showed up.
And
Buddy throws the ink, the papers, and the grandfather's shirt or his shirt or something like that into the river.
Chapter 18 is just his grandfather telling him about his paintings. There's like a hole in one of them that his grandfather punched. And
he's talking about emotions because he's been such an a-hole to Dot. Like, Dot's like, hey, how are you doing? And he's like, ooh, I have to work.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, dude, why are you being so rude to Dot? We find out that the party is on Friday, and then that's what he's talking to his grandpa about paintings, and grandpa's talking about anger and passion.
Anger inspires, hate destroys, and love fixes. Anger's
fancy
okay.
lesson. I like that. Then he was like, here's your fancy lesson.
Anger can inspire a person to make change and make art. Okay, chapter 19. It's party time!
And so Buddy takes his tux to the office because he's not going to go home to change. And then we find out he's like the only one invited.
Yeah, none of the other people were invited to the party.
And I was
because...
like, ooh, Mr. Fancy.
Yeah.
They make him put his tux on.
Buddy, like, doesn't want to go, and they make him, like, do a little swirl and dance with his tux, and Dot was like, oh, you don't want to go? That's great. We can go play detective more. And Buddy...
But he's like, I feel like Dot's avoiding me. I'm like, yeah, of course she's avoiding you. You were being an a-hole to her.
They also fight because she's like, oh, if you don't want to go, then don't. Like, come play detective with me. And he's like, no, I don't want to do that. This is stupid. I don't want to die. This ink thing is, like, super dangerous. I don't want to deal with it.
They're like, okay, well, we're going to be at the pub because we're going to have our own party since none of us was invited. Yeah. Come join us later when you feel like you want to hang out.
So the party was on like a rooftop, right?
Yeah. And I put awkward elevator ride.
Yeah, he's hanging out in an elevator with rich people.
And they're like, ugh, this
So, you know, Joey.
Yeah. This has been.
Yeah. When they get to the top of the roof, there's like mascot characters everywhere and stuff.
Yeah, and then Buddy's also finds out that he's dressed like the Help.
Buddy.
Yeah, man in a giant Bendy.
Yeah, runs into the mascot Bendy. He sees like Boris dancing and Alice is like conducting the band. Cute.
And then there's Birdie.
Bertram Piedmont.
Who is that?
The Bendyland guy. So he's in the game.
He is who this whole party is for.
Yeah, he's in the game.
I feel like I didn't get that information beforehand. I don't think Buddy did either.
This party was just about Joey announcing Bendyland, and this is also about Joey announcing that he bought a theater and he was going to do a toy line and all that other stuff and wasting more money.
Everything is going to change.
And then Allison and Tom Connor showed up at the party and Joey flipped.
So Savi told me that Tom and Alice are married because I didn't know that, and that's not explained in the book, but I'm like, Tom got fired and Alice is the voice of...
Allison is the voice of Alice.
Yeah. And so I'm like, she talked
about that in an elevator because he was in an elevator. She was in an elevator with Buddy once. And Buddy's like, wow, she's so pretty, like a movie star. And she's like, isn't it kind of funny that like Allison is my name and like I voice Alice? And he's like, what? And she's like, I voice Alice. And he's like, oh, I didn't know that. And she's like, okay, nice meeting you, bye.
I'm like, that's probably not a good move for her because she definitely gets she gets fired when she's like, we'll see how we'll see how tomorrow is.
Yeah, maybe when you cool down a little bit, Joey, we can talk about it.
But Tom says, I'm not leaving until I get what's mine.
Yeah, Joey do fight. Apparently, Tom was fired. Tom wants his patent back, and Joey won't give it to him.
And then I'm like, okay, I know Buddy doesn't know that much, but you could go to the patent office and look up what the patent is to find out what Buddy the machine is.
Oh, well, I was going to say, because Buddy's like, how did he steal it from you if you're the one who made it? He's like, I'm poor. Yeah. Basically,
he's like, you don't get this, kid. And the Buddy's like, I absolutely know what
I am poor, too. Thank you.
I like how
I know my nice tux.
Yeah, he like runs up to Tom and grabs him, and Tom's about to fight him, and he's like, "Oh, I saw how he filled out that suit. I don't want to fight him."
I thought he said that about Joey, because doesn't he try to? He's like, "Joey, what's the machine?" And Joey's like, "Don't touch me."
No, it's Tom.
I thought it was Joey, because Buddy tries to talk to Joey about the machine, and then Tom's like, "I'm gonna tell him," because Joey ran away. Joey's like, "Don't touch me," and then runs away. Tom tells him the machine was meant to make characters, actual real versions of the characters. According to the game, though, it was supposed to make, like, life-size models of the characters, and then it got switched around to be more, like, creating life.
Yeah, but because even Allison's like, it's not supposed to, like, create people, because that would be weird. I was like, what I helped create was monstrous.
He's like, it's not my fault. I didn't know what I was signing.
I also like, so this is supposed to be a big secret, but everyone knows about, Allison knows about this, Norman knows about this. Like,
well, Norman knows because he's observant.
Sammy knew about it. Like,
well, Sammy knew about it on accident.
I'm like, how?
Tom knows about it because he worked on it, and Allison knows about it because she's married to Tom. Oh. So, like, you know.
He's like, I didn't read the fine print of the contract.
Joey likes to hire desperate, talented people so he can take advantage of them.
And then Allison's like, yeah, just think about Susie. And I'm like, who is Susie? And then, oh yeah, she's the original voice of Alice.
Buddy left the party to go to the bar. He's doesn't like Joey Jr. Once he found out that Joey likes to hire desperate, talented people and take advantage of them.
He was really hardcore team
He's
Drew.
like, I'm out of Team Joey. I'm gonna go see my friends at the bar. So he goes to the bar, and then the bartender's like, they all went back to the studio. You want a cola? Yeah, they know him there, and Buddy feels really uncomfortable that they know him there. So yeah, his friends are all back at the studio. Dot managed to convince Jacob, David, and Richie to go with her to investigate. So Buddy runs back to the studio, and all the lights were on.
I don't think David was there, though. They're like, oh yeah, I didn't realize he was gone all that time.
Doesn't matter.
David.
Technically was there, wasn't he?
That's true, yes.
They saw all the lights were on, and he saw ink on the wall saying, he will set us free. And then he heard the words, hey, art department, and then he got knocked out.
He turns around and he's face to face with Bendy, which is kind of like the game.
Kinda, yeah. Chapter 21, Buddy awoke. He's tied to a chair. Same with Richie. Sammy tied them to a chair.
Yeah, and he took Jacob. I'm like, why you gotta take the black guy?
He took Jacob. Jacob is gone. And so is Dot. Dot got away.
Yeah.
Sammy comes in. He's Bendy masked up. So have you seen the game? He's wearing like the top of a Bendy mask with the eye holes cut out.
And then he's covered in ink.
He's covered in ink with his suspenders and...
So I wrote, don't drink ink, kids, because that's what
happens. Don't drink ink. Bendy... No, okay. Bendy and Buddy, I wrote next to each other, and it's really hard to tell the difference. Yeah, Buddy's like, what is wrong with you, Sammy? And Sammy's like,
you're the sacrifice.
Ink invaded my body, and now I'm obsessed with it.
Why please a man when you can please a god?
And then a projector came down and smashed Sammy in the head.
Yeah, Dot for the win. Chapter 22. Dot asked Buddy why he came. He's like, you were in danger. I'm there for my friends.
Dot untied them. She was like, sorry, I'm not very strong, but I'm very tactical. Yeah. Like, she just sat in this, like, upper...
She was waiting for him
to get his mark. They gotta find Jacob, so Buddy thinks that they're probably in the theater.
Where they think the machine is.
Yeah, and he's like, Richie, you go get
Mr. Drew, because he
will not approve of what Sammy is doing, Mr. Drew. He'd be very upset. So Dot and Buddy are gonna go find Jacob, and Richie's gonna go find Mr. Drew. So
they hit the same hole in the wall. They're on the catwalk, and they're like, out of the corner of their eye, they see something dangling from the
This
catwalk.
is so confusing to me. They're like figures in spider webs and inky ropes. So it's like ropes covered in ink in a spider web format on top of the stage.
So what I took it like, kind of, they're like wrapped.
Okay.
And they're like cocooned.
They're cocooned.
Is what I took it as.
Fair enough. That's good. It's really hard to, in my brain.
Yeah, that was. They were like, it's a spider web, but then they're like
because
totally
they
wrapped.
lowered the ropes.
Yeah.
And there was the machine.
But then there's 3 of them. So not only they saw one, but then they go back. They go down to the stage, and they're like, oh crap! There's 3 people up there.
Yeah, they found Jacob covered in ink, and Dave, and Norman.
Dave from the art department, who leaves on time, and so no one noticed he was gone.
I completely forgot. Everyone forgot Dave existed because it was mainly just Richie and Jacob talking until this part of the book where he's like, "Oh, Dave." Dave and Norman are dead.
They're straight up dead. Not like moving at all. Jacob though is like, you gotta get out of here. Yeah, he's like fighting with himself. Like one hand is possessed.
They tried to save Jacob by chopping him down from the ropes with an axe. They're like axing the ropes that he's on, which makes me think it is just ropes they're hanging down from. And they did let him down, and Jacob's like, no, you gotta get out of here. You can't take me with you. And he knocked himself out to keep from hurting them.
Headbutts the stage. I'm like, ooh.
Then the lights went out. Chapter 23.
What happens to Dave?
What?
He pulls his arm off.
Oh, I didn't even notice that. Yeah. Really?
So, there's creatures on the stage, and Buddy's like, I'm not going to hide anymore. I'm going to face it. The creature looks like Sammy's notebook, and that's when you find out that it's Bendy from the machine. And then
Bendy.
He rips Dave's arms
off. I thought he was going towards Jacob. And then Dot was like, not my boy Jacob, and like yells at the ink demon, and then the demon goes after. We think it might be blind.
Well, it's darkness. They can't, so it's totally dark. They can't.
But I don't think it is.
Sneak. So Buddy is on one side and Dot's on the other, and he says hey, and then Dot says hey, and then it goes after Dot because she's the last one to say hey. Mm-hmm. Hey.
It's going after Dot, and Buddy decides to axe Bendy in the back, and it didn't work. So he like backs up and throws the axe at him, bleeding. And it hits Bendy in the head, and it distracted it just long enough so that Dot could dive under Bendy's legs. But then Bendy grabs her feet, but Buddy grabs her hands, and they're like, we can't play this tug of war because we're gonna rip her in half. So Buddy lets go, and then Bendy grabs her by her feet and like throws her across the room,
like lasso her.
Yeah, she's got thrown. The wounds on Bendy are closing because he did get kind of wounded when he got hit by an axe, so you can't really kill it.
This is the part where she's like, Buddy, throw me the axe.
Not yet, because Bendy goes over to Dot and picks her up and just squeezes her until she feels pain. Like, that's when Buddy was like, it's toying with us. It doesn't want to kill us. Yeah. It's playing with us like a cat. It's picking us up, throwing us around, and, like, squeezing us.
Which I think is what Jacob tried to tell them? Or someone tried to tell them.
It's a mischief maker. So Buddy plans, he's like, I'm going to drown Bendy because I know that it's underneath a trap door right now. So he's like, I'm going to throw the axe. Dot, can you catch it? And she's like, sure.
And then he's like, oh crap, what if I like throw the axe like
and it kills her?
Like it slices her hand open.
But she manages to catch the axe, and she chops Bendy's arms off with the axe, and then she starts swinging it at the ink machine to burst it open and have a bunch of ink comes out, and then Buddy runs back and hits the trap door button, and then the monster falls into the trap door, and then all the ink gets funneled into the trap door.
So it's supposed to drown him. But also, I'm like...
But it's made of ink, so it's not really doing much. He's just kind of trapped and screaming. And, you know, Buddy and Dot are like, we did it.
So they're going to take Jacob away. But I'm like, what about the Norman? But you told me that they're dead.
They're dead. They straight up said they were dead.
Unconscious, but... And so they're like, all right, we're going to take Jacob. And then, of course, because ink is drowning in ink, it reaches up and grabs Buddy's leg.
Yeah, a hand comes out of the ink, grabs Buddy's leg, and drags him down. And Dot tries to pull him, but Buddy's like, let me go. It's too late.
Let me go.
And then Bendy takes a bite out of Buddy's torso. like his abdomen. He bites into him in his flesh and it kills him.
I didn't get that.
You didn't get that?
No. I don't remember that at all.
The monster had sunk its sharp teeth into my torso, biting through my flesh, my muscles, my tendons.
Oh.
I gasped silently and the ink fell in my mouth again.
Yeah.
So it bit him and clawed at him and killed him.
Chapter 24 starts, I'm not dead, but I'm not alive.
Buddy woke up and he just like, it's like dark and he's listening to the ink hive mind voices. And then he wakes up again and he sees Joey Drew. And Joey's like...
He's smiling at him.
It's like, is that you, Buddy?
And they're on stage and Buddy thinks he's talking, but he's not.
Joey is like replying to him as if he's not saying anything. But Buddy pushes Joey over. And Joey's like, oh, I know you're mad, but I saved you, Buddy.
You're perfect. You're perfect, is what he says to him.
He noticed that Buddy starts to notice his shadow looks different.
The machine brought him back.
And that he sees his dead body on the ground.
Mm-hmm. Now we're on 25.
25, Joey was like, I know your purpose. It was this.
I wrote, so he's writing, I was like, with his own ink? Because he's like, made out of ink, right? Or no?
Maybe not. So...
He's got gloved hands too, and he's never owned gloves.
He's gloved hands. He's got stuff on his head. Although they say he has horns, but that's a kind of a red herring because you find out that
he looks like Goofy.
He's Boris. Joey's like, your purpose was to become Boris. He's the perfect Boris.
And the whole time, so he was hired for this purpose.
I guess maybe Joey didn't know that.
Because so the whole thing, he talks about like the machine didn't work right because kind of find out it needs a soul. So that's why they're sacrificing people because to make something without a soul.
Their first test was Bendy, and that's what created this ink monster. Was soulless ink monster was their first experiment. So Buddy attacked Joey, and then he ran and hid under the studio and became a real Phantom of the Opera of the studio.
Mm-hmm. So Boris is a wolf, for those of you that aren't familiar.
A lanky guy in suspenders. He does just look like Goofy.
And there is also, like, he also is talking about, like, he's in here, too. Like, he keeps trying to take over more of it. So it's just that he's got this dichotomy thing going on with the character. He doesn't know how long he can keep being himself. Like, he keeps forgetting about things, and, like, he's like, is that reality, or because that happened throughout the book?
So the twist is that he is the Boris from chapters 3 and 4 of Bendy and the Ink Machine, the one that helps you out, and he's also the Boris from Boris and the Dark Survival, which is pretty rad of a twist. He's Buddy Boris, I think is what they call him in the game, too. But yeah, that was a cool twist, because, you know, you don't know much about that Boris other than he's, like, the perfect Boris, you know?
He's the nice guy.
Yeah. Which is kind of cool. This whole book was just a backstory to that character, which was really cool, and I liked it. 5 stars. Back
page 2 also, at the end the ink is like bleeding at the bottom of the page, so like I thought that was a cool effect.
That is cool. It looks like somebody definitely smudged it. And so, that's the book.
That's it. That's all she wrote. So also I'm like, I feel bad because what about Grandpa?
Oh, he makes a point where he's like, you never know when this is gonna be the last time you're gonna talk to somebody.
Yeah, they were like being buddy.
Along. Yeah.
And his poor mom, and now he's gone.
Now he's missing in action. Yeah. He says that when he was hanging out in the studio, like hiding away from everybody, he sees people get fired and more people doing the ink things, forever. And he's watching it. I'd be so afraid if I was Joey, but
yeah.
Whatever.
Well, I guess he's not going to tag him. All right, so that was our reading for this month. Next month, since it's a short month, we're going to read another comic.
We're going to read Portal to Lab Rat.
Yeah, it's pretty short, but...
gave me nightmares, so pretty excited to revisit that.
I haven't read it yet, so I'm excited, and we liked the Portal games, so it should be a good time.
All right, see you next time. Bye.
Bye.